2015. Had a lot of fun. I only got to play 5 rounds. I won my first round and lost the remaining 4 rounds that I actually played before I had to leave with my friends because they didn't want to stay there too long. So if you saw this guy at the event, that was me, Kung Fu from Card Games TV. Let's move on to my deck. So this was the deck I was using. It's the Volcanic Tempest OTK deck. Most of the players didn't know what I was playing at the time. They were a little confused because they did see a couple Burning Abyss, and at the event there was a lot of Burning Abyss players. Even most of the Burning Abyss players were a little confused of what I was running because they weren't too sure, because I would play something. Mainly what confused them was every time I would summon a lava golem and they're like, what is he playing? Burning Abyss don't play lava golem, right? And it's like, I'm not really running Burning Abyss. I'm just running a small engine because of lava golem and in grinding golems restriction of, I can't normal summon or set in the turn in which I use them. So if I tribute 2 monsters that my opponent have to give him a lava golem, I'm defenseless on the field because I can't set anything. I can't set a monster to defend myself. So, I'm essentially giving my opponent a free 3,000. It's not like lava golem has the restriction that the monster cannot attack, which it should have had that effect, but whatevs, right? Or at least it deal 3,000 every standby phase. God, if they can attack me with it. But anyway, I need something to, to defend. Since you can see, obviously I don't have a lot of back row. So you already should know how this particular Tempest deck works. It's largely monster based, so a lot of my defense has to come from my monsters like Battle Fader, Construction Train, Signal Red, which of course these two can be hurt by Vanity's Emptiness and can be hurt by this MVP. If I can remember his name. Should have looked it up already. He should pop up. There he is. Armades. There you go. Armades, Keepers of Boundaries. So this bad boy, especially in Yang Zing's, getting that 500 boost, making it 28. It was not very nice because obviously I can't drop Battle Fader or Signal Red if he attacks with it. So that became a problem. So my hand traps were relatively useless against this. Of course, even my Burning Abyss were useless against this because they won't be able to apply their effects. So just this alone, when I was playing against the Yang Zing player, which was my first match, gave him the advantage. But what caused me to luckily win the duel, other than Volcanic Counter dealing the final blow to win me game 3, was the fact that he opted to destroy Armades so that way he can get a stronger field presence, which wasn't a bad idea considering the fact that I reversal quiz in game 3 and I had 6,000 life points. He had 21. But if he didn't Dark Hole and try to get 2 monsters, because he ended up with a Goyo Guardian and the 8 stars Yang Zing Synchro on the field, and he chaliced Forbidden Chalice, so he gave, which negates Goyo Guardian's effect, and gave it an extra 400 boost, so even like 3,200 I think it was, something like that. Point is, he had over 6,000 damage on his side of the field, and he attacked with his Goyo Guardian, and then I took the damage, of course, and then I was like, damage step, counter his effect, and he only had 2,100 because of the whole reversal quiz, and he lost. And he was a little surprised, of course, because I had nothing on my side of the field, nothing in my hand, so he had, he had the winning position, but he didn't see my little graveyard trick, because I made sure counter went to the graveyard when I played reversal quiz. So since he never checked the grave to see if there was anything in the grave that could be of a threat, that element of surprise aspect, he attacked and lost. If he did, he would have noticed that his Armides was his advantage. After the game, of course, me and my friend pointed out that, you actually had the advantage. If you kept your field as is, your 3-star Earth Yang Zing, the 1600 one, if you kept that and Armides on the field, you could have kept attacking for 28 every turn with Armides, and you would have won. Even if he attacked with the 16, he will only take 16 from counter. And my next 2 draws was Infernal Tempest and Grinder Golem, which was not going to do anything. I would have needed a Lava Golem. In order to win, and I already used up 2 Lava Golems. So 1 Lava Golem inside a 30 card remaining deck, like whatever I had left on my deck, right? It was going to be really tough. That's like a 1 out of 30 chance that I was going to draw the Lava Golem, which clearly in the next 2 draws I wasn't going to. So he actually should have won. But he did misplay like 2 other times during the course of the match. But they were small, shit happens. I did pretty good in game 2. That was my best game, was game 2, because I was Nightmare Shark, Lava Golem. So I was doing a good amount of damage. So game 2 I was doing really good. Game 1 I could have won, but I messed up. I chose not to set a graph, and because I forgot that he had Armides on his side field. So of course Armides was giving him an advantage throughout the match. I chose not to set graph when I should have, and I was expecting to block with my battle faders and my train, right? But forgot that. Okay. Here's the thing. I knew Armides was on the field. He also had the 8-star on the field in game 1, which was going to be, which was 28 at the time. But I forgot that Armides was also 28. I thought Armides was still 23, because I looked at the card and, I see 23. So I was like, I don't need to block this. Like, I don't need to put a monster on there to block Armides, even though it obviously would have been a better choice. Like, technically, I second guessed myself and I screwed myself over by second guessing. I should have just set the graph and that would have been enough, because I wanted to take 23. But I didn't realize he wasn't 23, because I had no problem taking 23, because I would have been down to 100 because I had 24 life. I would have been down to 100, which would have been perfect for my Reversal Quiz Lava Golem combo, which I had in my hand, which I wanted to play in the following turn. But I didn't set the graph, so I was wide open for an attack. I didn't realize that he was 28, so when he attacked me, he was like, game. I was like, well, he's 23, I have 24, so I have 100. It's like, no, he's 28. It's like, you're right, he's 28 because of the power boost effect. Yeah, game. And of course that sucks, and that was game 1. It's like, damn, it's important to win game 1, but then it's like, damn it, I fucked up, you know what I mean? It's like, technically there was no reason not to set graph. Like, I could have set it, and I didn't have to use graphs. Well, obviously he would attack my Armides and graph wouldn't do his effect, but that's the main point, is that I can block the second attack. But I really wanted to take the 23 though. That's the thing. My whole plan was based off of the fact that Armides was supposed to be 23. If I knew he was 28 and I had that in my mind, my plays would have been different. One, I would have gave him Lava Golem, because he had 2 monsters. I would have just gave him Lava Golem and then, train or battle fader that. And then I would have just Reversal Quiz and just, that's what and I would have just let him lose life, because I would have just gave him Lava Golem, Reversal Quiz right there and then just let Lava Golem, deal him damage. It would have took a couple turns, because his deck can't easily get rid of Lava Golem that fast. Even though his deck synchros, he actually at the time couldn't easily get rid of it that fast. There was one scenario where he got rid of Lava Golem, but he had a tribute to get rid of it. But on average, he would have still been stuck with it. And I think I had a counter in the graveyard, which obviously wouldn't have activated because of Armides, but it could have, with the life points changed, that counter would have killed him. So anyway, shit happens. I'm human. I'm not flawless. I can make a mistake here and there. But this deck did pretty well, considering I wanted to play longer, because I wanted to at least get a 5-5 ratio, 5 wins, 5 losses. But my friends had to leave, so I left with them. Grinder Golem. put them back in because the idea is to get into the Tempest. I didn't get to Tempest anyone, so no one got to see what the deck really was about. They experienced the Lava Golem, Counter, and the Burning Abyss throughout the course of the day. No one really saw Grinder and Tempest do its thing. Yeah, the DD Dynamites were dead draws throughout the whole event for me because obviously I didn't get to play this, so this was pointless. But Reversal Quiz made an appearance from time to time. Grinder, I grinded somebody so I can go into counter, but then he did a combo, and that was the Volcanic guy. He did a combo, so he popped my tokens, and in the process dealt me 1,500 points of damage. I had nothing right there and then, except for Battle Fader and like 2 trains in my hand. Ended my turn. He activated his face down, Vanity's Emptiness. His 1 copy is allowed to play at the current time, and that was enough to stop my hand trap. So he attacked me with my own Grinder and a Volcanic. It was what was it? It was the 1700 where you summon it, you grab 4 pyros, put them back in your deck, draw. He had that on the field. He had, was it Lavabo Chain? I think it was Lavabo Chain without materials, and he had my Grinder, and that was enough to end me out. Sucks giving your opponent a big beat stick to beat you with, right? Volcanic counters, of course. If it's in the grave, you take battle damage, it'll get removed from play. And if you have a fire monster still in the graveyard, your opponent takes damage equal to the damage you take. If you have multiple copies in the grave, the effect, the effect stacks. So you could take 3,000 one time, and then all the counters will activate, and they will all deal 3,000 each. Kirin, to help me speed up the process of getting counters to the graveyard as fast as possible, along with Foolish, so I can get counters in the grave and use that as my win condition, obviously. So that's the use. That's what Kirin's for. Kirin just doubles as a counter because it helps me get counters to the grave, and it's a fire monster. So 1 Kirin gets me the counter to the grave, and I already have now the fire for counter to go live. Battle Fader, Signal Red for defensive purposes. Signal Red, since he's 3, you can use him with counter or Kirin or Mirror and Might and go into a rank 3 plays, and I have a lot of rank 3s. Battle Fader, obviously to end battle phases so you can survive battle related OTKs. Also it has 0 attacks, so attack a Lava Golem with that. I could play Infernal Tempest. If I attack a Lava Golem while counters in the graveyard, my opponent would take a lot of damage, so that's important. Mirror and Might, if I give my opponent a Lava Golem, for example, I can take it back for the turn, attack him for 3,000. End my turn, then my opponent will have Lava Golem during his stamina phase, so I'll take another 1,000. That's 4,000. I actually did that like twice at the event. I also was against a Shaddoll player. He had 4 monsters inside the field. I gave him a tribute 2 for a Lava Golem, then I tribute the other 2 for another Lava Golem. Then I used a Mirror and Might to steal one of the Lava Golems back, and then Kamikaze to get rid of both Lava Golems. So that way he doesn't have 6,000 points of damage on his side of the field at the cost of just taking 2,000, right? So I cleared his whole field just with the 2 Lava Golems and the Mirror and Might. So that was pretty cool. Kind of sucked because it was cool to get rid of his field, but it sucked at the same time that it's like, yep. Because he had Secret Village, and I couldn't play like Reversal Quiz, which I wanted to, which would have helped. But the main thing that would have helped would have been the Grinder Golem, Tempest, and the 2 Dynamites that I had like in game 2, if I'm right. In game 2, no, that was game 1. I had that. That's what it was. Game 1, I had that combo, but then I had since he had Secret Village, I discarded Grinder. I ended up having like 7 cards in my hand during my end phase, so I let Grinder go because like no way am I going to be able to play Tempest when Secret Village is on the field, and the only spellcaster in my extra deck is a rank 1, not 3. If there was a rank 3 spellcaster, that would have been different. I would have Burning Abyss, and I would have went into my plays, and I would have been able to beat the deck. Because as long as I can play this card, I would have been able to beat the deck. 2 Dynamites would have been enough to kill him, since he didn't have that much back row. And that was game 1. Game 2, he sided out. the secret village, which was interesting to side out the secret villages, which is what was giving him the advantage in the first place. But he never saw these cards, so he obviously didn't know that, you know, the card was working. So he took it out and put more traps because he realized that I was playing a monster heavy deck. So he ended up having a Ring of Destruction. I think he put advantage on everything, but never drew it. But he definitely drew the ring, and the ring ended me out in game 2 because he ringed one of my monsters. And let's see, where am I at? Yeah, Burning Abyss, of course, Graph. If I have no spells and traps, I can special summon it. But then I can't do a secondary effect, which is if it's sent to the graveyard, I can special summon a Burning Abyss monster from the deck onto the field, except for a copy of himself. Skarm, same thing, no back roll, I can special summon it. If I do that, I can't use a secondary effect, which is during the end phase in which this card went to the graveyard and still is in the graveyard to activate and resolve the effect, I can add a level 3 Dark Fiend type monster from my deck to my graveyard. Typically, you can add stuff like Tour Guide, Tour Bus, or obviously another Burning Abyss monster. I use this typically to graph and keep the loop going. Graph, Skarm, graph, and you know, float with that until I can thin out one of the thins out the deck. Plus, it's enough defense for a while until I draw some of my other combo pieces. Farfa, really good card. It was useful against 101 and a couple other monsters. You know, mainly XYZs that had materials, and I wanted to guarantee that they didn't have the materials. So it was good against that. In some scenarios, it wasn't so great. Also, it was good to get rid of, if my opponent has 2 monsters, to get rid of 1 monster, so that way, you know, I essentially blocked 2 attacks. Which was awesome. Was originally playing Alec before, but I was like, negating the effect and the monster still be on the field is not good for me. Being able to just remove the monster so it's not on the field, it's like, I don't care if the monster does its effect. Getting rid of the monster so it can't attack me works better for me, so I started playing Farfa, and it has been working way better. Plus, he has 1900 defense, which is more useful than 1000 defense monster. So 1900, 2000 defense, and 1500 are pretty decent. Numerous times, Skarm would stall me for a couple extra turns because of the 2000 defense, as well as Farfa being able to let me live a little bit longer by getting rid of my opponent's secondary monster. And then reversal quiz. Technically the MVP when I was playing at the event. So I'm glad I kept it, and it's going to be part of the deck for a long time. It helped a lot. I would let my opponent deal me enough damage to the point where I could play it. A couple times I didn't play it when I should have, because it would have gave me a better position, but because I got burned to death. So if I reversal quiz, that would have reduced the chances of me losing to burn. Mainly I lost to people burning me, not really to attacks, because obviously I have ways to deal with attacks. I was like, man, I need more players that can attack me, you know, instead of burning me. So that kind of sucked. Infernal Tempest, didn't get to use it, but if I take 2000 more damage from one single attack, I can banish all monsters from both players' deck and graveyard. DD Dynamite, of course, deals 300 to my opponent for each of his removed from play cards. So that right there would be my win condition once I play Infernal Tempest. And Foolish, so I can send the Burning Abyss and get their effects, or just send counters so I can use counters effect. Slack Magician, once per turn, if it would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, if it would be destroyed by battle, once per turn, it can't be destroyed by battle. If it's targeted by a spell, trap, or monster effect during either player's turn, I can detach a material to negate and destroy the card that targeted. And she has 21 in defense, which is pretty good. I wish she was a rank 3, because obviously that would have been great if she was a rank 3, because I can make her real easy in this deck, of course, if she was rank 3. Plus, her being a spellcaster would have been useful in that Shaddoll matchup. But she's awesome. And the way you make yours with 2 battle faders. With the original version where Unknown Synchron was in the deck, Battle Fader, Unknown Synchron, or 2 Unknown Synchrons would have made her. Leviathan, there was one point where I wish I made him instead of making another monster. I forgot what the other monster was that I made, and I wish I made him instead because he would allow me to detach a Farfa so I can banish something until end of turn. I think, yeah, it was the time that I made Acid Golem. I made Acid Golem and I killed Winda. I made Acid Golem and I killed Winda, and then of course he got Shaddoll. He got the Shaddoll spell card back, which gave him an advantage when it would have been better to make number 17 Leviathan Dragon instead. And
that's the answer. Thank you.
Then I used the number 17's effect to detach Farfa to banish Winda, so that I can get a direct attack instead and deal a lot of damage. And then of course, when Winda came back, it would be a 22, and 22 can't run over a 25. So that would have been a better strategy than making Acid Golem and just running her over, because then he wouldn't have gotten back the spell card, plus dealing damage. You know, obviously it's way dealing more damage than just the 800 damage I dealt. I could have dealt 25, which is better. You know, the point is to deal more damage. So there was a scenario where I wish I created this instead, but stuff happens. Wind up Zen main. I made him like twice at the event. The time I definitely made him was because I was going up against the Volcanic deck and he had Murmello. He used it to get Bombless. Since I knew he had Bombless, and I didn't want my monster to get Bombless, I summoned Zen main instead, and he didn't Bombless because I obviously. So that was good for me. So I was able to stall a little bit with that until I was able to get rid of the Bombless and one of his Mirror Forces, was it? Yeah, one of his Mirror Forces. But since he had more traps, it really didn't matter, and then eventually he burned me. So it's like the obvious weakness to this deck is a whole bunch of back row. And burn is any deck's weakness, but against this deck, it's weak against back roll because there's no back roll. There's really no back roll hate in this deck. Not in this version anyway. Alright, the most I have is Zen main, but not many people wanted to attack Zen main for me to get the effect. But of course, if he would be destroyed by battle or card effect, I detach material so he's not destroyed. During the end phase in which this effect was applied, I can only do it at one time. I can destroy one card on the field. And he's a fire, so he helps activate counter's effect because he's a fire attribute. Submersible Carrier Arrow Shark didn't make it at the event because one, I never got to play Infernal Tempest, so I never made it at the event. But once per turn, I can detach material from this card and deal 100 damage to my opponent for each of my banished monsters. Since I have I have 30 monsters in the deck, I could deal close to 3,000 off of that. Leviar, pretty much not many things went out of play. I mean, my counters went out of play from time to time, but I wasn't in the position where bringing the counters back and then taking damage again was, you know, my best move. You know, there was other moves that were more important, so I really didn't make them at the event. But I could detach material from him, and I could special summon from out of play a level 4 lower monster, whether it be my monsters or my opponents. Make equip engineer. Really wasn't in any positions where I needed to summon him and use him. Everything else, you know, everything else worked out. Like, I used more of my main deck than I did my extra deck, obviously, which was pretty cool to use my main deck more than my extra deck. But he has the effect that once per turn, I can detach a material target a face-up attack position monster I control, changes to defense, and if I do, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects that turn. So it makes it, you target him and it makes him like a perfect defense for the turn. So I could stall for like 2 good turns with that. Number 49 Fortune Tune, I did make him, and that was against the Chain Burn or the Cure Burn deck. That was in game 2. It got me to a point where I had 9,000 life, but he did the 9,000 burn combo, and I had 9,000. If I had 9,500, I would have survived. Or if I had an MST, I could have killed the bad reaction Samuchi and gained 9,000 instead of taking 9,000 damage. So he had his win condition, and that's what happened. You have your win condition, you're supposed to win, right? Of course, Fortune Tomb can't be targeted if it would be destroyed by battle card effect, detachable material, so it's not. During each of your standby phases, you gain 500. I wish it was during each standby phase period, because that would have been lovely. I definitely would have survived the 9,000 burn combo. But anyway, I'm doing a video and gain 500 every turn. He can't be targeted. If he goes from the field to the graveyard, he can target 2 monsters in the graveyard and add them back into the deck, so that way he can go back into the extra deck, which is good because then he becomes recyclable. Also, it would be awesome if he had the effect where I could gain 1,000 life points instead. If I had 2 in the extra deck, of course, I would have made 2 of them, and then that would have helped me out. So after that match, I was like, another Fortune Tune would be really good in the deck. That would be very useful. So I might take out like String de Jin and put in like another Fortune Tune, so that way I have the option to be able to gain 1,000 life every one of my standby phases, which will definitely be good against a burn. So that's what I would do to fight against burn. But another thing you could do if you want a side deck or main deck is you could take out the battle faders and put in Curry Photon. Curry Photon. Use Curry Photon. It does work good with Reversal Quiz because you're deliberately losing a specific number of life points. But it also has the added ability where it prevents effect damage and battle damage, so it's really good. Plus, it won't be unlike Battle Fader, where Vanity can stop at Battle Fader or False Dino or anything similar to that. Curry Photon goes to the grave, not the field. So you could play this against like Vanity, obviously, the Dijin Lock, stuff like that. Well, the Jin Lock with the Necros obviously will stop Battle Fader and Train, just like a lot of the other stuff can be stopped with it. But Curry Photon would obviously be a good choice to swap Battle Fader out with. I did have Curry Photons, but it's in another deck. I didn't want to put it in this deck since it wasn't originally for this deck, but it would be something I would want to have had instead, because it would have been very useful in many scenarios, especially when I noticed the good thing about this is that you can play this at any time. So if my opponent enters battle phase, even with an Archimedes, I could have just played this, and this would have been great to have. That's what I'm trying to say. Like the whole entire time, when I was losing to burn, I was like, man, if I just had this in my deck, or if I was playing the other deck that does have it. But I chose to play this to prove a point, and I did well with it. So I'm happy with how I did, even though my record wasn't that high. Acid Golem, I made him one time and then he got ringed. No, I didn't make him one time. I made him more than once, obviously, because I made him in the Winda scenario, but the Yosenju scenario, which was my last duel, that was round 5. I made Acid Golem, and he got ringed. And I had a Graph, so I was able to use Graph's effect to bring out a Skarm. I was thinking of bringing out a Farfa because I could deal 1,000 by attacking with it, but I wanted to keep the ability to constantly search, to keep field presence, because my hand wasn't so great. I brought out Skarm instead. So I opted for 200 less damage to keep consistency. 10 Temple didn't make it. Dijin didn't make it, but they're decent enough for whatever I had to face. if I had to face against a lot of XYZs. But Farfa tends to do a lot to the burn XYZs, so I don't really need this effect as much because Farfa does it. But this and Farfa obviously combos very well to completely take away 2 XYZ materials from a single creature, so that's awesome. And it can be done in either player's turn, so that's great in many ways. Plus, it gets stronger when you use this effect, so that's obviously useful. It's an Earth type monster, so stuff like Shadow Prison wouldn't work. Like this deck is not weak to Shadow Prison, but a lot of people would like to think because of Burning Abyss are dark, play Shadow Prison. That's not a good idea because obviously if you look at the extra deck, there is no darks except for Chimera type Fortress, but there is no dark XYZ, and those are the main monsters that I would make anyway. So this deck is not weak to Shadow Imprisoning. And the Jin, he is more of a Acid Golem substitute when I don't want Acid Golem on the field, so that way I can use like Train or use Graph's Effect or something like that, you know, where I want to special summon and, you know, do Farfa's effect or Skarm's effect, because this will actually prevent me from using Graph's Effect. I use Dijin instead, String Dijin, because it can become 3,000, so I have a 3,000, you know, monster that I can run something over with, but also still be able to use the effects of the Jin's, the Burning Abyss, as well as be able to use my Train for defense purposes. Battle Cruiser Dianthus, that's basically my Gaga Cowboy, so to speak, because I could summon like 3 Burning Abyss in one turn, right? Deal a lot of battle damage, and then main phase 2 overlay the 3 and make Battle Cruiser Dianthus detach and deal 200 for every card in my opponent's hand, especially if my opponent has a really good hand size because they drew a lot of cards. And that's one thing that definitely gave a lot of my opponents an advantage, was most of the decks had draw power. The Volcanic deck definitely had a lot of draw power. I would have won if it wasn't for the fact that he drew into a lot of cards, because he would have no cards in his hand. I would have advantage, and then suddenly he'll flip a trap, draw a Volcanic, discarded, draw, discard, and, you know, on my turn, draw, and it's like, that draw advantage is hurting me. The Chain Burn deck or the Cure Burn deck, obviously with the Jar Greaves and the Recklesses and the card Ds, a lot of draw in there, so that allowed him to get into his combo faster, so that gave him the advantage. Of course, somewhat of an MVP monster of the deck is the Nightmare Shark, because, you know, it definitely helped deal a lot of damage, so it gave me a fighting chance. Even though most of my opponents had a shitload of back row, I was able to bypass most of their back row and deal them damage. So because they did summon some pretty strong monsters, and sometimes they would have a Lava Golem, which is strong, but the ability to attack directly, you know, it's definitely great in this deck. And then added the Lava Golem's damage, that's 3,000 all in one, you know, single strategy. And I have 3 for the consistency, so I can constantly keep using his effect over and over again. And Chimera type Fortress, in case I'm up against a Cyber Dragon deck and somebody just so happens to still have a Cyber Dragon on the field, I can Chimera type Fortress, clear the field. Originally in the deck was Sir, but I took Sir out because I didn't want Sir to be a dead draw in my first hand that deals to, you know, do pretty good at the tournament. So I didn't want to be in a scenario where my first hand I get Sir and there is no Burning Abyss in the graveyard. Sir becomes useless. So, and I wanted a little extra strength in the deck, so I took out Sir and put in the Mariner Mites, because the Mariner Mites work with the Lava Golem and the Grinder Golems, so that way I could use them against my opponent. Instead of just giving them to my opponent, I could take them for a turn and do something with them. And then of course, Mariner Mites, you know, ability to take some stuff, because Armides is a fiend, so Armides actually gave me a advantage. Actually did give me an advantage and wanted to do. Why can I spell Armites? I get boundaries. There you go. Armades. Okay, Armades. You know, as you can see, he's a fiend type synchro, so I was able to snatch him up with Marion Might and attack my opponent's face down monster with Armades. His monster was a Yang Zing. I was surprised that he didn't do the Yang Zing's effect, but obviously thinking about it again, it was Armades. Of course, Armades will prevent the Yang Zing from getting his effect, so that's why he didn't do the effect. So I was able to get him to the position where he, you know, only had Armades. That's what I did. That's what I did. That's what I did. Is that what I did? It feels like that's what I did before the whole counter scenario. But it definitely was a good play. Unknown Synchron was originally in the deck, but then I took it out and put Grinder Golem because I was, I want to get the Tempest trick off as fast as possible. The sooner I could pull it off, the better chance I have against a lot of these monster heavy decks, especially if I did go up against Undercross deck. This would have been useful, and any other strong monster based decks. This would have been useful. I wanted to Grinder Tempest against the Yang Zing player, but that didn't turn out that way. Because I would either get Grinder and Dynamite but not the Tempest, or I would get the Tempest, the Dynamite but not the Grinder, or I wouldn't have the Lava Gun Battle Fader combo on the field to be able to, pull it off. Torbus originally was in the deck, so I could recycle my extra deck, as well as some of the monsters like my Burning Abyss. I could keep the engine running, but I decided to put in Kirin so I can quickly get the counters to the graveyard, because not many people are experienced against counters, so that element of surprise where I can get counters to the graveyard and somebody won't pay attention and they'll summon something strong, attack, and then not realize that they're just ending themselves out by doing so. And then Alucard was originally in the deck, but since Alucard that I have is ripped in half, so that's not playable, I took it out and put in another shark, which wasn't a bad idea, but Alucard is the only real monster that can get rid of back row. And if I had owned a Downer Magician, that would have been useful against the Shaddoll Secret Village match, because I would have used her on any of my XYZs, and then I could have played my Reversal Quiz and Tempest and would have had a fighting chance, and pretty much probably would have won the Shaddoll matchup. But I don't own it, didn't have it, so that's what happened. And that's the end of the deck profile.